forgive the use of my phone for notes and timekeeping. I'm not just like looking at Instagram this whole time. um, So, Ligia, thank you so much for going through the process of getting the paint off in order to have this conversation with us. Also, everyone, thank you so much for staying after and having patience for this quick conversation. We're not going to stay too long, and we are also going to open it up for your questions. I was introduced before, Tricia Hearing. I am Artistic Director of Public Functionary, and we actually presented a work in progress with Ligia in 2015.
Yep.
Yeah, through a residency that you were doing with FD13. And it's so interesting because history is such a big part of your work. And so, of course, we're sitting here kind of in history where we haven't seen each other for, it's like 8 years or so since then. But I just have to say that that work, Minor Matter, that you presented in progress, was incredibly impactful on me. It was very early in my career as a curator as well, and the way in which you were sort of resisting representation and thinking about where you were taking abstraction and kind of just like what it meant as an artist of color to, resist the ways in which you were expected to create work. And that, kind of set a trajectory for me as well to think about the work I was doing. So I'm really appreciative to be here with you today. And so I wanted to just start by asking, where did the sort of impetus for this work start? I know you often start with like a score or an idea or an inspiration. So I'd love to hear more about sort of how this work came to be.
Sure, thank you. And yeah, okay, so there's in a way, working as an artist, like you're always kind of in process, so you're always kind of responding either to work that you've already made or kind of, or trying to push yourself in a trajectory or a space that's uncomfortable or unknown. And for a long time, I was resisting creating a solo, although for myself, or to author a work where I'm the main protagonist. In part because I was just previously interested in this idea of like a kind of hyperrelation that happens across bodies and being busy with that relationality. And then, at a certain point I felt like, okay, I have to be in the studio alone and just really mine this intimate, private space for a moment and see what I felt like still needed to be said in a way. I was spending a lot of time also in the Dominican Republic, in the village de Ostira, where my great-grandmother's from. My grandmother was also born there. And interestingly enough, not so much has changed in this village, luckily. But that's not going to be the case for much longer. And just being in that space allowed me to think more critically about what is a solo, what does that mean, how do you interrogate the self, what are these ideas about the self that are based on really foolish fictions inherited from a kind of Eurocentric lens. And then there was, it's not anecdotal, it's actually pretty important. I was spending time in the village and I recognized how precarious this village is in late capitalism because there's already foreigners coming looking for property. And the conditions of life there are that most people don't have legal papers for property because it's this region specifically is a product of marronage. So not far, probably 30 miles, is one of the oldest sugar plantations. So the fact that this community is going to be threatened and rendered more precarious, it just is just too cruel. And so that kind of instigated this interest and antagonism towards like capitalism that ends up getting figured as an absurd dragging of John Locke, who gives us, I mean, particularly in the United States, we inherit a lot of Lockean concepts, obviously, this life, liberty, and property, as is said in the narration, are entangled in this idea of individual rights, and this idea of the individual self, which that fiction does not work in large parts of the globe, right? But it departs from that kind of antagonism and spills outwards into looking at as well, you saw it. Sorry.
Yeah. I think you referred to the absurdity, and that's something that I saw the show last night and again tonight, and I was thinking about it so much today, and thinking about the absurdity of it and the way in which you kind of move between comedy and tragedy, and this use of play and deviance specifically. And I think from when you first enter the space and you come in and start looking at the audience and kind of, we're introduced to this character who's sort of in their body, not in their body, in between this embodiment place, and they're sort of in the audience and in the stage, and it's playful, and it's also like you give this look, and your first look is like you're up to something. Yeah. That's what I read, at least. And so I'm curious more if you can speak to play and deviance as your tools that you use throughout this piece.
Oh, sure. For me, I've come to understand that there was something in this field of play. I was able to interrogate potentially a deeper relation to these antagonisms. Like, I just recognized that somehow if I could find not lightness, but obviously comedy and tragedy are very tightly intertwined in a way, and it's like formally, like how could I find a way to interrogate some of these things that are so normalized in our everyday, but yet are actually really absurd if one really thinks about it, right? The kind of fictions that allow us to just take a lot of things for granted, including other humans. So I feel like in order to, I've always been attracted to this idea of artifice, why I use so much, like it's very plastic, often the works, saturated with color and physical narration, but play just, it allows me to escape a kind of, what I think could be a trap, authenticity sometimes, I think can be a trap for marked bodies. I think also to try to dance around the impossibility of representing the tremendous weight of this historical violence, of it really like 5 centuries of racial terror. It's a lot. Like, it's not representable, right? So I can't, I just have tried to find different ways to maneuver and to use kind of what I describe as a physical narration to speak back to this historical terror.
I'm really curious about your process of making a work. I know you are incredibly process-driven, you must be, and I've read in an interview with you, you spoke about how you are sort of inside the work, and it sort of reveals itself to you as you are making it. So I'm curious about what in this work was revealed to you as you were making it. If you can recall those moments of, just kind of that. I'm always fascinated with the idea of artists just, understanding what it is as you make your way through it. I'm not an artist, I'm a curator, so okay. I don't have that same sort of patience of practice.
You kind of have to just sit with things that don't make sense for a really long time and trust that they'll make sense at a certain point. You just have to attend to it, like you're attending to the material, listening to the body, listening to what it's doing. I do a lot of improvisational work. I film everything, and you just stay at it. And I like to provoke myself in the studio and sometimes start with something that's really difficult, like for this revenge, for example, I was like, yeah, how can, one of, like, part of some of the themes that are present in the work are the entanglement between, like, revenge, rest, and the question of repair in consideration, yeah. And, yeah, that, yeah, you just sit with, you just sit with these things, and I mean, rest was something that I was needing for myself, in part because I've been working very intensely on pretty heavy work that is just carries a lot, and I felt like this work was going to invite that for myself in a way, or how can I arrive there, and its impossibility was revealed to me, just like the impossibility of repair is revealed to me, and not and it's through just being with this material, like just sitting, like being, yeah, I don't know. I love being, anyone that knows me knows that I love to be in the studio a lot. And the process of dancing around, it's not that the work ever ends up being very dancey, actually, but it helps me to think and to problematize and continue to ask questions about what this body is, what it means, what it has come to mean, and also what is the potential of it totally losing meaning as well.
I'd love to open up to some questions if anyone is ready. I hope you all have questions.
I don't know how to ask this question, but I'm curious about some of the intentionality of like the footwork. I noticed you did a lot of like gesturing and dragging and a lot of that. So I'm just curious if you could talk more about what that meant or where it came from, or just share anything about that.
Sure. So a scandal. I started with plotting. I started with a plot, which is the scenography, the piece of floor, and plotting. So the feet start to signify, like, the mapping of this body in space. So that was kind of a way for me to use the metaphor of plotting, in a way, translate it into the body, and to make resonant the materiality of the floor. And I've been busy for a long time with this idea of figuring the body in space and time, and then the process of disfigurement, and how that's always entangled with particularly black or blackened bodies. So I'm working through that, oscillating between figuration and disfiguration also. Yeah.
Do we have a mic? Or it's over here. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Can we go with this one over here? Yeah, we can bring it over there next. Or,
I'll bring it to you.
yeah.
Hi, I loved your piece, and I would love to pick up on something you just said about your work not being very dancey, because I'm a theater person, and I read it totally as theater, which I loved. So I just wanted to ask you about how the theatricality helps you do this disfigurement, which I also saw as exorcism of history in a sense. Like, anything that you'd like to say about why you move more towards theatricality in this piece? I haven't seen others, but...
I think all of the works, I think, are more or less pretty theatrical for the most part, or that's the kind of space that I privilege. I mean, I'm interested in staging subjectivity. I think that in part is important to, like, theatricality enables a kind of rendering of the subject in an interesting way, and also renders it a kind of fiction as well. So I think that's, so that's something that interests me, and I also, I'm kind of, I use kind of conventions, theatrical conventions, to try to break the theater as well, right? So the floor gets, turned, the things kind of, the construction kind of slowly deconstructs. I don't know.
I have a question.
Can I give you the mic? It's just so everyone can hear. hard to track where everyone's going. Do you want to go over there? I can't see where people are going or who's running.
Oh, you mean bring the mic there?
No.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Ligia. I'm Latina, and I saw something from the Caribbean and historical, and I think artists are really the historians, of a nation. So bringing in what you brought with lack of words said so much more. And I had a visceral feeling in my body that told me exactly what was happening throughout the stages, throughout history. And I was like, oh my gosh, here I am, in the colonial time, just galloping away and throwing away, just the skeletons, nothing matters. And then in the Dominican Republic, the sound, how you use the sound to bring you into places, and the movement of the body, that was marvelous. It was so artistic. I just really felt it in my, my whole body. Congratulations. That was really incredible.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question about audience interaction. Do the other audiences, as you're touring, have they been interacting with you at certain times? Because in a way, it seems like you are in such a locked space and going through so much. So there's so much happening within you that even though you're interacting with the audience, I don't know if the audience interacted with you, how that would change what you're going through.
To be honest, most people are they're scared. So, yeah. But occasionally there's a brave soul that takes a piece of meat and enjoys it with me. But it's rare.
Okay, I see the mic person now. Got it.
Thank you. I'm asking as an artist, I'm really appreciate. I saw the historicity of movement in your body, and it doesn't matter for me, you call it theater or dance, but it was there, and I really appreciate. But my question may be a little bit more personal.
Yes.
How you let go anger, revenge, and the technicality of protest to something that Tricia called comedy or audience respond in laughing. How you let go that? Thank you.
How do I feel?
Let go that technicality of revenge as something that could be so-called comedy or require audience response, either eating together with you or laughing, and how that historicity of pain that the other person mentioned becomes some things that you can let go to be something else for the audience. I want to learn. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you. That's a good question, a difficult one. But I think there's a way, I've come to understand, like, you can't always absorb the shock and terror and rage and, I'm always, of this burden in part of representation, how you interrogate all of this history. How do you allow yourself to create a space to talk about that terror while simultaneously maybe pointing to another story or another possibility. And in doing that, I think it's not that I need laughter. It's not that if no one laughs, it's also fine. But I think there's a way in which that kind of tension and the kind of ambivalence maybe that happens in looking at my body as it moves and oscillates. You're like, revenge? Are you serious? Or wait, this is funny? Or is she serious? It allows for a kind of an unsettling of the situation, which I really like. I use it for a kind of tension. It's like, and I think it's important that I leave space for all the audience to interpret the work and to respond as they wish. I think sometimes people laugh out of discomfort, not because they actually think it's funny. And in part, maybe they see themselves. So, yeah, I think I'm more interested in maybe ambivalence than anything else. Yeah.
Any other questions? Just raise your hand if you want the mic.
This is more of a technical question. At times, there were some words in the back that were blurred. And I didn't know if that was a mechanical issue or it was purposely done that you couldn't read what was back there. Does anybody know what I'm referring to? And was it done purposely or was it a mistake?
I think it was the code noir on the scrim.
A what?
Or the code noir on the narration, the code noir on the scrim? You mean the word repair?
On the very back.
No.
In the very back.
Farthest back.
Yeah.
The farthest. Oh, because it goes through the scrim. I think the projection.
No, it was...
Ligia, you know how it would project kind of on the floor like John Locke enters?
Oh, yeah, John
but
Locke.
then it was in the top. Yeah.
That's a good. Yeah, I'm like.
So if you couldn't see, if where you were sitting, you couldn't see it on the floor, then it, yeah. It was. I just remember saying John Locke enters during that chapter.
It's on the little square, but maybe it was. Yeah, it refracted onto the
screen.
Onto the screen, I guess. Yeah.
So not intentional.
That doesn't always happen. It's a unique show.
Everyone's trying to figure out what does that mean. It means nothing. It was a reflection. That's art. I think, we'll wrap up soon as we're only going to do a quick 20 minutes. But I'm curious just to ask, your performance, your work is incredibly detail oriented. There is thought behind the set, the light, the sound. Oh my God, can we talk about the sound? The soundscape.
Win Bennett and my twin brother, twin shadow, George Lewis Jr.
The music is amazing.
And Joseph Wegman there, light designer, woo woo. And Corey Scott Gilbert, co-performer, collaborator for many years.
Yes, Corey, amazing. But everything from your choice of performers that you work with to the costumes, to the light, the words, everything it's like a visual painting. And so I'm just curious, for you, what details were particularly satisfying about this work? Like, what is something that you put in the performance that you were like, oh, nailed that?
Oh, I have a lot of fun playing with my face, obviously, or facial expressions.
Those are also details, like the face, yeah.
Or the details of how, like, legs go. Akimbo. I love the position of the light and it's intended to feel like chapters, and the precision, I hope, of dramaturgy, which I think is important. Yeah.
Thank you. It's an incredibly stunning, impactful, important work, and I really appreciate you showing it to us here in Minneapolis. I know you mostly show in Europe, so thank you for coming to the U.S.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you.